This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen Matriarch, a new British folk horror feature from Ben Steiner. It follows Laura, a successful working woman with everything she wants, from alcoholism to eating disorders to having no ability to handle a relationship. After surviving an overdose, she begins to experience strange hallucinations, leading to irritable behavior, inky black nosebleeds, and sudden outbursts. When her estranged mother reaches out to her, Laura caves and returns to her childhood countryside home and community, which almost seems to have never changed since she left. However, her once abrasive mother does seem to want to redeem herself, going the extra mile to make sure her daughter is comfortable. When Laura resists, the cracks begin to show, and not only does her mother's true nature begin to surface, but so does the more sinister reason why Laura was summoned in the first place. The concept isn't too bad on paper, with enough of a balance between both the personal conflicts between Laura and her mother, and the greater horrors of the town which are eventually revealed. The title is played out thematically as well, as the movie makes a point of the power struggles and dependencies involving the three parties, with the two women at the top as they try to gain the upper hand over the other, whether it be psychologically or physically. Even when the film starts to lean in more into the horror elements, the thematic sentiments are still at play on an even greater scale, further creating a twist in the overall notion of motherhood, if not parentage as well. This all said, the actual execution comes through with a bit less finesse. The story meanders a bit on a few other details outside of these more direct horror elements, generally when it comes to Laura and her personal story as she explores her old hometown. And while it does slowly build upon the truth of the town, that gets a bit loaded into the latter half of the film. Admittedly, it does seem that the movie wants to be more atmospheric in its horror tone, and it does work well enough there. But it's an atmosphere that replaces any actual action with a greater feeling of dread and despair. It's appropriate for Laura's attitude, perhaps, but it doesn't exactly make for a compelling experience for the audience. It also doesn't help that there's a point in the story where, I suppose once the audience learns that something is amiss, Laura's mother almost seems to drop her pretenses and starts acting almost cartoonish, which can take away from the experience as well, and Laura herself isn't much better when it comes to development. Overall, the writing seems more about the events that occur rather than why they're happening or how it changes everybody, at least in a personal way. The other changes are definitely body horror. Speaking of which, the movie puts in a good amount of weight on its production and how it shows itself off. Like the story, it works out to a bit of a mixed degree, usually depending on what is being seen and when or where it's at. There's a relatively small amount of special effects on hand throughout the movie, used sparingly and generally at the best moments for them to occur, rather than just being thrown around for the sake of having these effects. On another note, it would seem that the movie is shot on location, except for maybe one or two interiors, and given the countryside setting, it's a factor that gives the events a bit more immediacy, given the quietness of the setting. Again, the atmosphere is what seems to be selling the horror, dragging things out through overcast scenes of silence punctuated by visions beyond one's imagination, lurking in dark and supernatural shadows. At least I figure that's what the filmmakers were going for. These story issues are still present, of course, and unfortunately they're still enough to bring down the rest of the experience. In fact, the whole movie feels a bit disappointing, with an interesting concept that gets a fair amount of presence, but ultimately ends up being waylaid by a number of other little things adding up. Or in this case, I suppose they're subtracting from the final result. Matriarch. Ben Steiner, 2022. 2 stars. I wouldn't really recommend it, unless you're in the mood for some short and simple horror. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you have something to add, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I suppose the lesson to learn from all of this is to never move to the city or to the countryside. Doesn't exactly leave a lot of other options, though.